it's Margie with the Asking Spot, working on this lovely couch table this week, and this one is, it's actually fine in and of itself pretty much. I mean, there are some marks on the top here that were caused by, well, I won't say any names, but somebody's husband.
Who could that be?
Likes to just chuck his keys down on it. So, whatever. It's time for a change. As for the base, I don't really hate it, but you know, that shabby chic look,
The time has come.
I'm kind of done with it. So yeah, I'm gonna try something different on it, but it's gonna be something that's temporary if I do everything correctly. We gotta clean it first, degreasing it, and that's because even though I'm gonna go ahead and sand it afterwards, you don't want to sand it while it's still got the goo from previous polishes. It's not about dirt per se, it's actually about that canned spray-on polish that people use. That leaves a product behind that will kind of gum up the sandpaper, so it's not as effective, so you got to change frequently when you're doing that. And then on top of it, when you're sanding, then you're just kind of sanding that gunk into the wood, and that's going to leave you with an uneven finish with whatever you're putting on top of it, because some of it has the gunk, some of it doesn't. It's just not a good thing. I am no wood authority.
Respect my authority!
But I am pretty sure that these are two different types of woods. The top is different from the bottom shelf, and the number of giveaways. Well, for starters, like when sanding it, see how these, how horribly marred up and messed up, and I went through 3, 4, I probably should have went through 5, but I at least went through 4 different sheets of sandpaper on the top. Meanwhile, the bottom, this is the same sheet I used. Really took nothing to clear that off. The other giveaway is the smell. When I was sanding the bottom one, it smelled like pine, so I'm guessing it's pine. Here's the other thing that is making me think this is also 2 sets of wood, and why I have to do some other finish for the thing. Because originally I was like, oh, I'll just, put a nice wax on it and call it a day once I get it to its natural color. Here's the thing. The natural color on the top is leaning slightly pink, and the natural color on the bottom is leaning slightly yellow. Yellow pine would be my guess there. The top?
What's this?
What's this?
I haven't got a clue.
Your guess is as good as, well, your guess is probably better than mine. So if you want to leave that in the comments below, that'd be great. But what I'm going to do now is just give them both a simple whitewash. It also will help to cover up, I don't know what was cracked or messed up with the wood, but the original maker of this piece filled it with something that's white and it doesn't sand off, and I don't really mind. I kind of like the, aesthetic of the whole thing. So whitewash it. Now I've done that before and gone into great detail, so I'll do one of these and I'll put a link in the description box below. I've also done the bleach technique and I like the results on both, so I'll go ahead and put a link to that below. But I'm really not into the chemicals. Not to mention, this has some filler in it that they use, the prior makers that I mentioned, and it's gonna cover up better if I just use a simple whitewash, which by the way could be any color wash. The biggest thing you have to remember with that is you do have to use a chalk paint. Then from there you just water down about 50-50, maybe 60-40 paint, and then you brush it on and leave it sit for about a minute, unless you're in an exceptionally humid area like I am.
It's humid, it's the humidity.
Then you're gonna wanna leave it on a little longer. Then you just wipe it off. And voila, it looks great. Now, the nice thing about it is if you put it on too long, well, okay, you can sand it off pretty easily. And if you haven't put it on long enough, you can reapply. It is an easy, forgiving technique I highly recommend. So not only does humidity play a factor in this, so does the type of wood, very much so. This top wood that I'm calling teak, because I don't know any other, it's like a nasty little sponge. It took the paint, it couldn't be wiped off very well, but I could spray it with water, and that did make it release a little of the paint, but ugh, what a headache. Meanwhile, the bottom shelf, which I didn't film, but it just went on super easy. It went on exactly like I expected it to. I could just paint it on, leave it sit for a minute, wipe it off. I guess I'm saying if you're building something from scratch, try to avoid teak or whatever this is. And that's the thing, I don't know what teak wood is. It's a tree? Yeah, but okay. Live and learn. Allowed time to dry, I now find it just a little too white. I mean, I like the fact that it's taken away the pink from the top piece of wood and the yellow from the bottom piece of wood, but I'm gonna add some burnt umber on it. Now, technically, I could just run out and buy a dark wax and do that, you know, for a little bit of depth in here and then wax the whole thing, but that would be running out and buying a whole nother product when I already have burnt umber paint on hand. So that's what I'm going with. All right, here's the plot twist. I'm gonna put fabric on the legs. Now, I know,
It's been done before.
yeah, everybody's doing that. That's not a problem because you can use a polyacrylic, which is my backup. I have a polyacrylic or a decoupage medium. I have both of those. I could do that. However, I like when they do the fabric on the walls, you just can pull off when you re-wet it with water. You can take it off and everything's as good as new. And as I am prone to change my mind, I thought that's the route to go. Everything was going great. Throughout the week when I was working, I'd come home and on the way home I'd stop at the fabric store, found this beautiful fabric. It is not too thick and it is not too light. So it should be perfect. Easy, right? All you have to do is get liquid fabric starch. Now for you, I have a link in the description below to get it online, because that's apparently the only place you can get it. But I had this. So, spray starch. I'm gonna try this and see if it works. Using 2.5 yards of fabric, I went ahead and first ran around and measured everything so I could make my own sort of pattern. And then I cut out all my pieces and I've labeled everything, like bottom strip, one leg is long A, blah, blah, blah. Just make sure you label them because otherwise they just all become whatevers. I also labeled them at the side that I wanted to be on the top. So I'll know how, you know, okay, this is all the pattern is going in the right direction. Now the big test. So the plan is to start somewhere inconspicuous and with a tinier piece, because if this is an absolute fail and I have to switch to something more permanent, well, at least that's only one piece I might have wrecked. Although the beauty of all of this though is that if you use fabric starch to do this, when it comes time to take it off, you can just wash the fabric and it's fine again. Stop! This attempt.
Disaster.
Yeah.
Failure.
Yeah.
Horrible!
Yeah. It was a time waste. So, moving on to plan B. Now you can go two routes with plan B, and it is either just go straight to a polyacrylic. I would use a matte. And the nice thing about a polyacrylic is it makes it water resistant. So, you know, when people don't use coasters, if I were doing the top of this, that's exactly what I have to use. Or you can go with a Mod Podge. Now, Mod Podge does also come in a furniture decoupage Mod Podge, but it's basically putting the glorified glue that this is and then adding some polyacrylic to it. So if you already have polyacrylic around or it's easier to get, use that. But if you're like myself and you want to make sure it's not permanent, I want the idea that water can make it come loose, because if I change my mind, I'm all set. So I'm using a matte Mod Podge, and yeah, because this is pretty much a glorified school glue, I'm not guaranteeing it would work, but I'm kind of thinking it might. Just use a glue if that's what you have. Here's the game plan. Gonna apply the decoupage medium.
I like her bangs.
Me too.
Apply that first to the piece of furniture.
Nominees for achievement in cinematography.
And then put your fabric on it. Now, I'm choosing to use a synthetic brush for a few reasons. A natural brush, I think, would absorb too much of the product, and it also has too much flexibility, whereas I want more control, so I like a stiffer synthetic brush. Then there's also sponge brushes, which can often disintegrate in certain products, so I felt like that would be just too much time spent trying to pick little clumps of that out. Just not worth it. So, synthetic brush, brush on the Mod Podge or decoupage medium of your choice, then apply your fabric. Now, your fabric you want it to be just a little bit larger than what you are hoping to cover, just because if there is anything that shrinks due to it, you know, trying to fill a gap is harder than just trimming off excess. And then once it's on, just leave it to dry. Once it's fully dry, then you come back and put on the top coat. Can I just say I picked the wrong weekend to do this? It's grossly hot out. All right, so I have taken a couple hour break because, but here's something that I've been doing in the process, and I didn't have the camera running just because it was frustratingly gobs of sweat. Actually, I have to say, if my climate wasn't an issue, this is pretty easy to do. The only thing I'm going to add and touch on here is that I have been folding the hems, the raw edges, folding them just a little bit. Takes a little extra time, a little extra glue to do it, but then the finish of it is so much better when the pieces meet. So it's a little bit neater that way. And I have to say, the other tip I would offer is if you can get your piece elevated and flat and do everything that's just laying flat, you'll probably come up neater than trying to do it vertically horizontal. Yeah, I got that right. All right, it's sundown. It's been a long day. Here's the thing that really irks me is I got frustrated with that last piece, so I just dunked it in the decoupage medium and slapped it on and folded it where it needed to be. That was probably the easiest piece I put on this thing. Now, I am gonna need to brush it on when it comes to trying to get around the doorknobs and doing fun stuff like that. That might need some more detail. But I swear to you, my next leg, I'm just gonna spritz the piece that, the fabric I'm putting on, then I'm gonna dunk it in the decoupage medium, fold the edges and slap it on.
Do you need a minute to compose yourself?
Now, I think the heat's getting to me. All right.
What a difference a day makes.
What a difference a day makes. Oh my. Okay, so it's still like 88, but the humidity is in the 60%.
How old are you?
Okay, yeah, I do sound like an old lady. All right. But, am I in a better mood? Now to do the hard part. The biggest task I have going against me is the fact that this piece has handles that are, once again, these are older type handles. They're bolted in. They're not just like normal handles. So if you have a piece that has handles and you can take the handles off, yeah, take the handles off. Behold, what you are witnessing is multiple pieces of blue tape in an attempt to hold this in the right spot so I can feel and cut out the handle spots. Once it's dry, and I mean seriously dry, it's easy to cut through. It's got like a almost paper feel, but you need a very sharp blade. Put this in just today. Then, as you're going along, you'll be really happy you gave yourself at least a lip's worth of extra fabric that, something to hold on to as you slice through it. It makes it a lot easier than in some of the spots down below that I was like, oh, this almost fits perfectly, and I have only a fringe there. That's going to be a little bit more difficult. Fully expect to have some areas that I'm going to have to reapply glue because it's just, after you slice through it, some of it kind of buckles and opens. Not a big deal. Still have top coat to do and still have some slicing to do. So unless in the next edit, if you don't see me being like, oh, hi, this should be probably a pretty easy project. Now here's another fun thing you can do to clean up the edges. Just the threads. A lighter. Now remember though, it's if you're using a natural fiber. If you are using a synthetic, you're basically setting the whole thing on fire and going to melt it. Not a good plan. But for just the loose threads, this works beautifully. It kind of goes without saying though, if you are going to use this lighter technique, also remember to have a well-ventilated area, something around to extinguish the flames. I have water over here. I also have, I've got one of the scrap pieces. It's soaking wet, so I can tap down anything should it go a little bit further out of line than I'd like it to. All right, before we look at the final results, let's take a look at where it started. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel. It really, really helps out the asking spot. Other than that, here it is as the final result. And now if you're thinking, I liked it better than before, well, that's the beauty of pretty much everything I did to this. It would be very easy to return it. I just have to re-wet all the stuff I put on as far as fabric, and it would come off and back to the regular legs. And as far as the top and the shelf, dark stain, and I'd be right back to square one too. I like the fact that going forward, if I get tired of this fabric pattern, well, I can do another. I will caution this though. I took the easy route with this kind of abstracty floral pattern. Matching things up was easy and fine. Had I done this in a stripe, it would have required a lot more precision, or if I had done it in a pattern that, you know, had a specific way of going. So there's my little bonus tip on that. Thanks so much for watching the asking spot. Speaking of bonus, we got the bonus footage with some bloopers coming up next. It's a bird, it's a plane. Yeah, it's a plane. How did they ever mess up Superman? It is a piece that that's not right. A product that, well, so is oil. This is going to be a really long blooper reel because I haven't even started. No, that's ugly. And I think I'm tired and I need to eat. Once it's thoroughly dry, the neighbor must be outside. Now once it gets to a good and crunchy kind of dry, then it's super, of course I have to use tape and different stuff. Everybody, grow your bangs out, they say. I'm very hot and kind of cranky. You know what kills me about paint is you can need just one tiny little drop more to finish up a piece, and you can't get it out of the brush. But oh, heaven help you, you drop that same brush on the floor and the inside, and yeah, you got a stain for life. This is going at the end of the video, isn't it? Rant over.